What happens to companies that hang on tightly to the past without realizing that doing so is increasing risk? Remember Kodak? They failed to adapt to what they could see on the horizon. And I'm sure you know of at least one business owner who has confidently steered their company right into bankruptcy, feeling certain each decision was the right one, the decision that would change the trajectory from crash and burn to recovery. Without seeing what's changing that's affecting your company's fortunes or where the company is spinning in circles, decision makers really expose themselves by failing to adapt. So, a significant upgrade must happen in decision making to take into account both complexity and uncertainty, which are two conditions that characterize the business environment, in fact, the world environment now. My name is Donna Jones. I supply intelligent insights to develop transformational leaders who are inspired by purpose, which in turn leverages performance and, of course, prosperity. It's about gaining flexibility and agility. It's not necessary to wait for a crisis to create better solutions. In fact, it's irresponsible. I'm also the author of Decision Making for Dummies, but don't let that title fool you. It's a resource guide to decision making in the 21st century. In this introduction, you'll learn how you make decisions. At the end of the introduction, I'm going to introduce you to 3 free video lessons. And by the end of the 3 lessons, you'll know why decisions get stuck in ruts, what anchors your decision making when chaos reigns, and how to work with your inner skills that are invaluable in complex everyday situations. Daniel Kahneman described in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, 2 primary ways of making decisions that go with being human. System 1 is automatic. System 1 embraces intuition, bias, and a lot of cognitive processing that happens without you knowing it. In fact, a conservative estimate is that over 90% of your decisions are made without conscious thought. Just bam, it happens in milliseconds. The other system, System 2, is slower, requires your concentration and your deliberation. Tying your shoelaces or making big financial purchases where you have to take the time to deliberate, weigh options, or analyze are 2 examples. You take the time to think, you have the time to think, and most importantly, you're consciously aware that you are making a decision. So for that reason, you give all the credit to System 2. However, making decisions on autopilot runs the show. System 1 is your ally in exponential change. So System 1 is the high-speed data processing capability that you have built into you, absorbing vast amounts of data, including the social and emotional information in the environment, both around you and inside of you. What are you thinking about? How do you feel? All of that. Firefighters, executives, and repeatedly successful entrepreneurs rely on intuitive decision-making because your intuition sifts through the emotional signals that can hide beneath facts and figures. So intuition then is lumped into your System 1 decision making. It's not exclusive to it, but it's a part of it. Because your intuition absorbs social and emotional information, it detects genuine probabilities for success, and it tells you when to change direction if a decision turns out to be wrong or when conditions change. Skydiving requires what science writer Stephen Kotler calls hot cognition. Skydiving and other extreme sports, but even today's business environment would be considered a form of skydiving in a certain way. It requires hot cognition, which simply means multiple decisions made under pressure with high stakes consequences. It's a characteristic of executive decision making and of any decisions that are being made in completely unpredictable conditions where you really don't know what's going to happen next. Sergey Brin throws himself into all kinds of activities that require split-second precision decisions. Whether he's aware of it or not, he's strengthening his intuitive muscle. He's strengthening that System 1 capacity. Psychologist Gary Klein researched how military leaders make decisions when they have limited information and there are plenty of lives at stake. He's written a lot of books. His most recent is Seeing What Others Don't, Insight. I referenced 3 of his books in Decision Making for Dummies, and you'll find a podcast interview I did with him on the Evolutionary Provocateur podcast. Research he conducted with the U.S. Marine Corps starting in 1995 revealed how to strengthen capacity for insight and intuition, which are 2 different things, along with how it works at the subconscious level. The Marine Corps recognized the value of intuitive decision-making even then and had it in their command and control manual. Firefighters and executives use the same process to make the same high-stakes decision, and you do too. High-stakes, fast-moving conditions where action is required doesn't give you the time to make a perfect decision, as if there is such a thing. So decision-making in fast-moving environments calls a shift toward rapid-fire thinking, the ability to hold empathy, allows care and understanding to be a requisite part of your intuitive assessment. Without it, companies continue to disengage employees and manipulate customers instead of engaging loyal team members, customers, and shareholders. Investing time in raising your self-awareness will certainly benefit you through greater accuracy. So, drawing from Gary Klein's work on naturalistic decision-making, this is a simplified map out of decision-making for dummies of how you make your daily intuitive decisions without giving it any thought at all. First, your typical day will be fairly predictable, sometimes routine. You absorb, without noticing, a lot of emotional, social, and physical information, data, saturated in your environment, and you'll pick up on cues or patterns, things you've seen before. The cues add up to be the patterns that predict what's going to happen next. For example, think of when you've walked into a room of strangers. You're on alert, you're paying attention to whether you're safe or not. If you need to make a decision, your intuition searches your subconscious database looking for solutions from previous decisions that have worked before. When one pops up, it's run through a check to see if it will work. If more than one pops up, simultaneously they are run through, double-checked, and assessed to see which is going to be the most workable. Then, bam, the decision is made. Milliseconds have transpired. No wonder you didn't even notice you made a decision. When you're faced with high-stakes decisions, nothing is predictable, the data you need will be incomplete, the goal might even be unclear, and the conditions will be highly fluid. Yet a rapid response will be required. It'll be high stakes. So your subconscious gathers all that data into account, big data, small data, feelings, social, what you see, what you sense, and then comes up through your intuitive instinct several possible courses of action. All options are simultaneously run through the test to see which one will fit. One comes out as looking pretty good. It's modified automatically to adjust to the circumstances. And then shazam, one is selected and implemented. Of course, and this is where we fall outside of intuition, there are going to be cognitive biases and prejudices that are part of the System 1 mix, part of that soup, if you will. What that means is the more you're aware of yourself and the more you invest in your self-knowledge, the better your intuition can function more accurately, because essentially you'll have a better grip on what to trust. So System 2, what's referred to as rational decision-making, more often than not comes in a series of steps. Particularly in business, it looks very logical, it's very linear, it requires linear thought because it assumes you have all the information exactly when you need it and that the circumstances are predictable. Rational decision-making is also tangible. It's easier to relate to because you can see and you can manipulate the information, you can run scenarios, you can test options. You've generated options, you might even be aware of how you deal with risk, either by pretending there isn't any or by making use of it for innovation purposes, for example. You're mentally concentrating on processing information and making decisions. If you run a medium or large company, you'll have other people mentally actively solving problems too, through use of a series of steps, gathering information, and so forth. You might approach decision-making using a mind map or a way to spatially relate all the steps you're going through to consider stakeholder consultation, customer feedback, available facts, and other information considered pertinent. Rational decision-making loves matrices, data, analytical tools. It's all ways of seeing things. Though business schools might advocate relying solely on rational decision-making, assuming it's impartial, impartiality is actually impossible, because the minute you overlay meaning to the data you're interpreting, the minute you interpret any part of the data you're looking at, you've applied System 1 biases or thinking preferences, and that's not the same as intuition. Consider how many times two people have looked at the same information and come up with completely different ideas on what it means. Until now, business decision makers have trusted System 2 as the hero because you're aware of it. But placing trust in rational decision-making as the hero in business decision-making is a real handicap in today's reality, because fast and frequent decisions are required to stay responsive. So you need both, the rational and the intuitive. You need both System 1 and System 2. By becoming comfortable with making lots of fast, high-stakes decisions, you're able to accept that making mistakes adds to your personal database of what solutions will work, when, and where. But here's the clincher. Most people don't know is that if you are emotionally upset, angry, scared, frustrated, agitated, experiencing any negative emotion, your mental and intuitive faculties are compromised. Both are compromised. Emotion and intuition are not the same thing. So your emotional capacity for self-regulation is absolutely critical. It means your capacity to regulate your emotions becomes a critical competency in the context of change. So here's an introduction to the 3 lessons I've put together for you. First one, lesson 1, why do decisions fall into ruts and what can you do about it? In lesson 1, you'll learn how you and your company fall into decision-making patterns and what you need to stay really agile for growth. Lesson 2 is why hack your decision-making? How do you invent? How do you anchor in uncertainty? And you'll also learn why decision-making must adapt. So what do you use to provide you with a base? How do purpose and values serve you? What needs to shift so you can make the adjustments required? And lesson 3 is about strengthening your inner decision-making abilities for complexity. So there's a series of skill sets that you have internally that lesson 3 will review for you. So practice those up and you're really good to go. You can go to my website to download Chapter 1, the Table of Contents for Decision-Making for Dummies. If you're ready to upgrade your decision-making to adapt to today's business environment, please contact me. I hope this provides you with some basic information. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to seeing you in the next series of videos. Again, my name is Donna Jones from insightstoaction.com.